Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. And I have one of my heroes on today, Karl Mecklenburg, who is an ex-Denver Bronco, six-time Pro Bowler, three-time Super Bowl appearances, um, played seven defensive positions throughout his career, and even in some games, he played seven different positions. And we're gonna really go to town on today on talking about leadership and keys to success and all those kind of things. And I can't wait. So, Karl, what I usually do is I just ask my guests, what or where did you grow up? What did you like to do as a kid? And how did that mold you moving forward?
Yeah, I grew up in Minnesota. My dad was when I was born. My dad was in the service. Actually, was born in Seattle, but since I was 2 or 3 years old, we were in Minnesota, and that's where my family was from. So I had grandparents around and aunts and uncles around, and it was a good way to grow up. Um, did everything, was played in the band, was in the Boy Scouts, wrestled, hockey, baseball, uh, obviously football. Loved to hunt and fish. Grew up kind of in that environment, and had a great childhood. I feel like that variety, doing a lot of different things as a youngster allowed me to get a real varied background, and looked at things from different angles than other people look at things. And when opportunities popped up, I wasn't afraid to jump on them. So that I think that helped form my nature, my character, the way I approach life.
Now, you graduated from the University of Minnesota, but you didn't start at University of Minnesota. Why don't you take us through that little journey? It's a pretty
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
journey.
I moved around a little bit. Like I said, my dad was in the service. And then when I was in high school, we moved during my high school years. I grew up in the Washburn district, kind of an inner city district where, and hockey was my thing. Now I was a hockey goalie. I started off
Wow.
as a hockey goalie because I was the kid that could carry the pads home, but got to transfer to Edina, and Edina was a huge hockey area. They won a lot of state championships, which is the ultimate in hockey in Minnesota, and they had a whole bunch of goalies, so I couldn't play goalie there. So I kind of changed my focus over to football. But was not a great football player as a kid. I was just one of the guys. As a junior in high school, I played JV. I didn't even make the varsity team. As a senior in high school, I was all state as a tight end and a defensive end, but I was only 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. Not big enough to play major college football. So I went to Augustana College in Sioux Falls, South Dakota,
Okay.
a Division II school there. We I got there. I grew 3 inches and 30 pounds my first year of college. Things changed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I got good. My second year there, I led the team in sacks. I played every down on defense. Um, when they had recruited me, it had been late in the recruiting season. The University of Minnesota had talked to me. I thought I was going to go there. At the last minute, somebody signed who they didn't expect to sign, so they didn't have a scholarship for me. And so on signing day, they said, "We want you to walk on." I was mad, so I went to Augustana. That coach had gotten fired at Minnesota, so when I transferred and left Augustana after they took away my scholarship, I walked on at University of Minnesota, and uh, and had a chance to work with some great coaches there. When I got to University of Minnesota, Mike Shanahan was the offensive coordinator.
Oh, wow.
Mike Martz worked in the film room. Tony Dungy was a graduate assistant.
Wow.
It was a great place to learn how to play football the way it should be played. Yeah, we had, the defensive line coach was a guy named Mike Wynn, who had played at a cup of coffee with the Oakland Raiders. And Mike told me, and this was something that stuck with me all the way through. Mike told me, if you can rush the passer, they will find a place for you
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
NFL football. And My junior year at Minnesota, I led the Big Ten in sacks, tied with Andre Tippett. And at the time, I was only playing half the downs. We had a senior who was the starter, and so we switched in and out. So I got on the map that way. And then my senior year, we were just had moved to the Metrodome. The Metrodome was
Okay.
the brand new stadium, and the turf was terrible. We had so many injuries, and we didn't have a whole lot of depth on the team. And we won our first 3 games. We lost our last 8. But playing at the University of Minnesota, I had the chance to play against Northwestern, and Northwestern had a guard there, a guy named Chris Hinton.
Uh-huh.
The Broncos ended up drafting first in 1983. It was part of the trade that brought John Elway to the Broncos.
Right.
And I ate him up pretty good when we played them, and ended up on the Broncos map based on that. So I was in the right place at the right time. And even though the team wasn't doing great, I learned a lot of things. I learned how to when everything's falling down around you to continue to do what you do best, and do whatever you can to help the team. And the Broncos saw that.
That's an amazing story. Now, I want to go back to your Minnesota journey, because when you first started at Minnesota, you couldn't play that first year because of the transfer rules at the time,
Right.
and they made you walk on. So it wasn't like you transferred in there and you were the starter and you're the All-American and all that
I
kind of
wasn't getting
stuff.
paid. That was
Yeah,
like they do now.
right. Take us through that journey, because you had to have some kind of a mindset to make it through that and continue your path.
Yeah, I was the scout team guy. The Gopher Squad is what they called
Yeah,
us. Like I said, working with Tony Dungy, which was pretty special. But it was just a kid at that point, so
yeah, yeah.
it was it was a challenge, but it was a good challenge. I proved myself every day. I was eating up their starters in practice. As soon as I was eligible for a scholarship, they gave me a full scholarship, and that was a goal of mine. And I learned, once again, I learned, show up and do what you're asked to do. If I wanted to eat with the team, I had to sweep up the weight room or the locker room. They usually put your jersey number on your laundry bag.
Yeah.
On my laundry bag was number 114. There's no 114 in football, but
No, no.
right, that was me. Right.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah. So, I earned my way onto the team, and appreciated it, and wasn't going to waste a single rep if I was in a game. That's for sure.
That's unbelievable. Now, let's go to the Broncos. You're a 12th round pick, which they don't even have 12 rounds anymore. They have 7.
Right. I was the 310th pick of the draft, 20 guys away from Mr. Irrelevant. That's the
It's
last guy.
amazing. So when you got picked, what was that like? I mean, were you excited? Were you kind of frustrated that you got picked so late? Or I mean, where were you at with that?
I wanted to have a chance. I was a pre-med major, had taken the MCAT entrance exam, was going to go to medical school if football didn't work out. And I think that also gave me an advantage.
Yeah, yeah,
I had options. A lot of guys go to the NFL and hadn't really paid any attention in school, and they're going to be digging ditches if they don't make the team.
yeah, yeah.
So I had options. It was they didn't have ESPN back then. I'm old, right? No ESPN. No, you had a landline. There was no cell phones, or at least if you had a cell phone, you were a huge businessman.
Yeah, yeah,
It was like a suitcase in your trunk. It's what it was.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I didn't have a cell phone. I just sat by the phone, and 2 days. The second day, my girlfriend, my wife now, Kathy, had come over. We were going to celebrate when the call came, and finally she got me a This Sucks beer, and I went to bed. I knew eventually somebody was going to call, whether it was getting drafted or if it was a free agent offer. So I was going to get some sleep, and phone call came. It was Jenny Ann. It wasn't the coaches. It was the Broncos secretary,
Wow.
secretary Jenny Ann called and said, we drafted you. We're going to mail you an airline ticket. We'd like you to come out, and we'll put you up in the hotel there with the other first year guys, and good luck.
And so when you got there, how many guys were basically on the roster or trying to make the team? Where were you in that process? Were you like the last guy on
Yeah.
the totem pole?
Yeah, there was some free agents. There was a lot of guys. The uh, the Broncos at the time were owned by a guy named Edgar Kaiser.
Yeah.
Edgar was trying to sell the team. There was um, he was an investor basically. He wasn't a guy that was around. He We ended up with 14 rookies making it that year. I mean, that
Wow.
was 14 rookies or first year guys. Over a quarter of the squad was rookies because he
Yeah.
would lower the salary
Oh, okay.
base so he could sell the team and make it
Yeah.
look.
Yeah.
And so, but there was 40 guys, 35. I mean, they got 110 guys in camp. You got 50 on, yeah, so more than that, actually, like 55, 60 guys. Had us put up at the Mart down in by the Mousetrap and
Mhm.
I-25 and I-70, and we were practicing down there, and there was no regulations as far as how many practices you could have, or wearing pads or not wearing pads, or I mean we were going at it. I mean it was practice all summer. I got there. I was a defensive tackle. I was a 235-pound defensive tackle in the Big Ten, which I could pull off in the Big Ten. They wanted me to gain weight. They said they wanted me up to 260. This was in May, and training camp started end of June. And they didn't say take steroids, but basically they said take steroids, and I wasn't going to do that. I ate and ate and ate and ate and gained about 10 pounds. It got a little bit slower.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're practicing, you're running, you're doing everything you can to get to the point you want to get, but I couldn't do it, which ultimately was a good thing for me. I ended up getting switched a couple years into linebacker, and that wouldn't have happened if I got big as they wanted me to get.
So that grind of that and knowing that, you're kind of the low man coming in to that, you just had to put your head down and just grind it out every day, didn't you? What kept you going there? I mean,
I
it
love
isn't like it
football.
is today. I mean,
Yeah, you're
it's,
right.
it's tough.
Yeah, you're right, Joe. I love football though, and I could play football. That wasn't the question. Wasn't could I play football? Every time I lined up on the field and I lined up, it got to the point during training camp where where uh, where the coaches were like pulling me out of the scout team because I was just screwing up and messing up all their offensive drills because
There you
I
go.
was in the middle of everything, and that when Coach Reeves says get him out of there, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the question was never in my mind, was never can I play football. I could play football, and I had problems, I had injuries, I had things go on that I recovered from, and I could play hurt, and I could play a different position, and I could beat a blocker, and I could tackle a guy with a football, and basically that's defensive football, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
defeat that guy in front of you and get to the ball. All those years of playing goalie, I think, helped me tremendously as far as taking angles. I understood angles, could take the right angle, especially when they switched me to linebacker, and could defeat a offensive tackle and offensive guard in ways that other inside linebackers couldn't do. Because I was used to lining up on them nose to nose and getting double teamed and all that kind of stuff.
It's amazing. It's an amazing story, to be honest with you. How far you went in professional football from where you started at Augustana to where to make 6 Pro Bowls. And in my humbled opinion, you should have a gold jacket. There's no question in my mind that you should be a Pro Football Hall of Famer. And I know I don't want to put you on the spot there, but
You're not. I should be.
yeah, you should
I
be.
mean, I see guys going in all the time who I had a lot of good games against.
Yeah.
So,
No, and I totally agree with that. And I think a lot of the Broncos get kind of overlooked in that way. But you are a Bronco Ring of Famer, and you are a Colorado Sports Hall of Famer, and you've been a semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Did you have goals and that you set when you started this process, or was it just I want to put my head down today and I want to work as hard as I can today, or was there certain things that you looked forward to, and did you set some goals to get there?
Yeah, Joe, I think a lot of people get lost along the way um, when they don't understand goal setting. For me, you should have desires, passions, missions that are extravagant, long term, somewhat general. For me, it was I'm going to be the best football player that ever played the game.
Wow.
That was the target, right? And then I set reasonable short-term specific goals to move towards that target, right?
Okay.
So it's you know, making sure I'm stretched properly. I tweaked my ankle or whatever. Just there little tiny steps. Something went wrong the last game. You look at it, you say, okay, how can I fix that next week? I'm gonna work on my hand placement, work on my vision, work on whatever it is. Work on those things during the week. Get ready for the next game. There's going to be something else that's wrong the next game, but you move towards those passions. Those if you go into it saying my goal is to be the greatest football player that ever played the game, and then you don't set those intermediary reasonable steps towards that goal, I think you get disappointed, you get lost. When you get drafted in the 12th round, you say, oh God, this isn't, that's too far to go. I can't do that. But that's not the way you approach it. You approach it, okay, I'm a 12th round. That means I get a uniform. I get a chance to go out and practice and show what I can do. I don't know if I'd make it in today's game, truthfully, just because I don't look good in shorts. They're just running around in shorts. Back when we played football every day, right?
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was knock down, drag out, and I could play football, and I
Yeah.
understood I could play football. It was the focus, and I saw it every year in training camp, like you said earlier. Unbelievably gifted guys that would come into training camp with pedigrees and had always been the best player on every team they'd been on, and they got to the NFL and they weren't. It was like, you're not the best player on this team, and at this point maybe you will be someday, but then they get there and somebody whips up on them and they don't know how to respond to that. For me, it's like, okay, I'm gonna figure out, I'm going to find a way through this, around it, over it. I'm going to watch the guys that are successful at this level, and I'm going to figure out what they do differently, and I'm going to do that. So for me, that desire, that passion, that mission, where I'm going to be the best football player that ever played the game, rather than I'm just going to get invited to an NFL training camp. And I
Right.
see guys with great talent where this was their desire, their passion, their mission, and that's that you don't sell yourself short. Reach for the stars. So you're definitely not going to get there if that's not where you're focused. Then set those reasonable short-term specific steps to get there.
It's amazing. I call that the process. Kind of had the same thing when I was a player. I was in baseball, and um, it was always the process was more important than the goal for me. So once I set that goal, it was like you said, the little steps. I wanted to win the process of getting to that goal. Whether I became a Major League Baseball player or didn't, I didn't want to look back and have regret on it. So the process of achieving what I wanted to achieve, if we had to run 20 sprints, I might run 21 or 22. Some guys would cheat, go 18. Those guys are setting themselves up for regret. When you're talking about your little steps to get to your big goal, um, that's why I love that, because it's the process of getting there and staying focused. And you talk so much, Karl, right there about when things didn't go well, you didn't dwell on it, you learned from it. And you always looked for a way to get better. You always looked for a way to learn and grow from anything that happened. You said maybe I didn't have a very good game, so I went back and I watched and I figured out I need to work on my hand placement. Just the little tiny things that you grew and you overcame adversity. How much does that translate into people's real lives and into the business world? And you and I have talked about this before, about how athletics and the business world really are the same. What kind of advice would you give to somebody going through kind of some of the same things that you went through as a player. I didn't have a good game and I needed to look at what I did wrong. What would you say to them?
Yeah, for sure. There's a thing I call a sports mentality. A sports mentality means that you are uh, preparing consistently. You're uh, performing. You're performing at a level and performing decisively. Trust in yourself. You're evaluating honestly, and you're adjusting accordingly. So there's a pattern of preparation, performance, evaluation, and making some changes, making some adjustments. And probably the thing that people miss most and the people cheat on the most and the thing that is most difficult is that evaluation piece.
Mm-hmm.
People understand, okay, I got to get ready for this meeting. People understand, okay, when I get to the meeting, I got to do the things that I've been taught to do at that meeting to make that sale or make that connection, whatever it is your goal is. But then they don't take the time to look at it and say, okay, what went well, and what didn't go well. What can I repeat that went well, and what can I throw out that didn't go well. And then make those changes. And the next time they're in the meeting, next time they're in a sales situation, next time they're making that phone call, they're gonna be a step closer to making that sale, to moving towards those desires, those passions, those missions of whether it's, I gotta make this many sales and this number for the end of the quarter or whatever it is. You've got to go through that process of preparation, performance, evaluation, and then change. And a lot of people drop the ball on the evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
In the NFL, you had no choice because you watch so much film. You're sitting in that film room, and the coach is pulling no punches. He's saying you did this right and you did this wrong, and there's no question it's true. But still, in that situation, when I'm watching it in black and white when I started, in color later,
Yeah, yeah, I remember.
I'm watching it, and I still would find myself saying, well, the defensive end didn't jam that tight end on the line of scrimmage and slow him down, so it's his fault. Or I'm supposed to cover this tight end on a two deep zone up the middle, but the strong safety is supposed to help over the top. What's he
Right,
doing?
right.
All right, and put it on somebody else. But I got to look at it and say, okay, I got to own this. This is me. This is what I'm supposed to do. Do it the right way. And if that's not working, find a different way. So yeah, it whether it's relationships, whether it's business, whether it's sports, whatever you're doing, you can follow that sports mentality pattern of preparation, performance, evaluation, and change.
And ownership. I love that piece on the ownership, because what I see nowadays in my journey with working with CEOs and so forth now is they complain a lot, not complain, they talk a lot about their employees not taking ownership. People can't admit mistakes anymore. It's hard for them to do that. And I go back to what you said, and it caught me so much when you said, even it was the smallest little thing on my hand placement on this play, and I didn't have my hands the right way. You were vulnerable enough to say, I need to fix that. And you worked on those little tiny things to get you to that top level.
That's one of the things that's really impressed me about Coach Hackett, that he's come in and he said, you know what? I'm not great at end of game stuff. He didn't realize that coming in, apparently.
Yeah, yeah.
But he said, all right, I'm gonna hire this guy who's a veteran guy, and I'm gonna use him to solve that problem, rather than like a number of coaches before him with the Broncos have just said, I'll figure it out, or whatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not taking proactive steps and adjusting accordingly. That's yeah, it's one thing to make a mistake, and one thing and another thing to say, okay, yes, I made a mistake, but it's a whole nother thing to say, how are we going to fix this? How can
Right.
we proactively take this step that's going to make a difference to the team, and ultimately the players on the team and the players in your business, the people that work for you, are watching what you do. Do you set, is it clear and is it consistent that that what's most important to the team, what's most important to the company is most important to you? Are you setting that example? And then are you vulnerable enough to say, okay, I made a mistake here, and admit it? And if you want the people to work for you to act a certain way, you've got to do the same thing. I mean, Pat Bowlen was unbelievable for an owner in the NFL. I mean, he was so present. You knew exactly where he stood. What it was clear, it was consistent. We were there to win championships. We were there to serve Bronco country. Those were our cornerstones, our commitment, and that's what you sign on for. Being a part of the Broncos was to win each game. I mean, they'd ask him before the season, what's your record going to be this year? 16-0. Always was. We had lost a couple games, 14-2. I mean, didn't matter. Even if we were at the end of the season and we weren't going to the playoffs, he still expected us to prepare to win each game. That was our commitment. And it was clear and it was consistent. There was no question what we were there for. And if you didn't fit into that, you didn't stay with the Broncos. And it didn't matter if you were the general manager or the head coach, or you were the equipment manager, or you were the maintenance man. He knew you and you knew him. He would take the time. I remember him standing and having a 10-minute conversation with the janitor sweeping up the locker room, and by name, and talking about his family and what. I mean, it was unbelievable, his connection. And that's the other thing. You got to have a clear and consistent connection with your team. And I saw that from Pat and how valuable that was. He was going to do what was right for you and expected you to do the same.
And that connection you're talking about, and I've said this for a couple of years now, culture wins. And the culture that he had won. But what he also did when you explaining him as a leader of the Broncos was he created you to have loyalty towards him. You probably wanted to go out and play the best of your ability, not just for yourself, but for entire Broncos country and everything else. But realistically, you wanted to play hard and be great because Pat Bowlen was your leader.
There's no question. Pat was my friend. Pat did things for me. My last year there, my contract had expired. The Broncos had replaced me. They were moving on. During training camp, they didn't have a pass rush. My first year, I was just a pass rusher, so they signed me as a pass rusher. First, right at the end of training camp, actually the week before the first game. So I come in, the guy they had replaced me with got hurt that week in practice, season-ending injury. So I played linebacker that whole year, even though my contract was set up as a pass rusher. So at the end of the year, I'm going to actually retire. Go in, talk to Pat, obviously tell him thank you. And I go in there and Pat's like, Karl, wants me to come back. I was done. I had 3 concussions that year. My career was over and I knew it. And then he hands me a check. That's he hands me a check that he says, Karl, if you'd have played defensive line, if you'd have played pass rusher at the level you played linebacker this year, you'd have made all your incentives. So it's an incentive check going out the door. He didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
I wasn't even going to be part of the organization anymore, but that was his nature. He was going to do whatever he could to reward those of us who did what he expected us to do. And it was just his nature that he was that kind of guy. Back then there was no guaranteed contracts. My last contract with the team, I'm in there. I'm up in the stands with him during a preseason game. I had been injured during training camp, so I couldn't play in the preseason game. So we're just sitting there before the game was going to start, and we're talking about my next contract. I mean, obviously all the negotiations go on with the with your agent. But so we're sitting there, and he's Karl, your agent's pushing real hard for a guaranteed contract. We can't do that, but I believe in you enough that I will guarantee it personally.
Oh,
And that
wow.
was enough for me,
Yeah.
and that was enough for him. And we, that was just his.
Yeah.
That's who it was.
That's amazing. What a great story. What a great leader he was. And I'm assuming you probably learned tons from him in terms of leadership and how to run an organization and so forth. And I want to touch a little bit on what you're doing now. After an unbelievable football career, you're now a certified speaker. There's only 10% of the people who are in the National Speakers Association that actually get the title of a certified speaker, and you've worked your way all the way up to that now. What do you like doing when you do your speaking? What's the difference between that and playing, and how you've moved up the ladder with that, just like you did with football? Same kind of goals, same kind of thing.
Yeah, Joe, I love speaking. I did.
You're amazing at it.
I'm so fortunate that I had two jobs that I loved as much as I loved as playing football, and now as a professional speaker. The
Yeah,
thing I miss most from football was the adrenaline, that
right.
and that pattern. Prepare, perform, evaluate, adjust. I mean, that's what it's the same thing. I depending on the organization I'm speaking for, everything's tailored. I get ready for them. I perform at a high level for a short period of time. I evaluate what went on. I repeat what went well. I throw out what, I mean, it's football, except I never get hurt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't
it's,
get hit in the head.
it's perfect. And yeah, I've been doing it 17 years at this point. And if you follow that pattern, you will get better. And I wasn't a great speaker when I started, but I'm a darn good speaker now.
Yeah, you
I'm
are.
speaking for national associations around the country, and then the companies that are parts of those national associations inevitably bring me in to speak for them, and it's a back and forth between the associations and the businesses, and I'm making an impact in people's lives. I'm making an impact for the companies that I'm speaking for, and I'm having a great time doing it, and life is good.
And so I want to go two places here. One is your 6 keys to success. If you can just, you don't have to go deep dive into it, but what is your 6 keys to success? You've mentioned probably a couple of them already, but
Yeah,
I think that
yeah,
would be important for people to hear.
sure. Yeah, Joe, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, teamwork with leadership being the ultimate expression of teamwork. The courage to try new things, the courage to be decisive. Dedication, which I describe as hard work, constant learning, refusing to quit. Desire, that's that dream, that passion, that mission. Honesty and forgiveness with yourself, and self-evaluation and with others. And finally, goal setting, reasonable short-term specific steps to get to where you want to get to. Um, those are my keys to success. I learned them in the NFL, but they apply everywhere. Relationships, community, business, obviously, and sports. And one of the things I've found is that just about anybody who can watch a football team, or watch a baseball team, or watch a hockey, or watch any sport on television and say, okay, these guys, the guys in wearing white are playing like a team. The guys in the dark colored are not playing like a team. They can identify it. They know what it looks like. They understand it to a certain point, but they don't see themselves as teammates. They don't see themselves as leaders and teammates, and in their business situation, in their family situation, in their community situation. Truthfully, they are. They need to understand that every group of people coming together acts best as a team.
Hmm.
And that's my job. My job is to remind people of things they already know, but point it towards their lives. And that's how I approach my job. It's about the individual. It's about the team. It's about the people sitting out there who are struggling and don't realize that they're struggling just because of their vision. They don't see it as a team situation, and they need to see it as a team situation. If they're going to succeed, the only way it's going to happen is if the whole team moves forward.
It's amazing. And you and I talked about bringing the athletic realm into the business realm and the correlation there. What is the biggest challenge you've had talking to a business um, about that, about being a team, about being, when you have a business, you have people from all over, and you have some people who are trying to make it to the next level, go up in management, go up in, be the boss, whatever it might be. How do you get them to think as a team in a business situation, or is it any different than that in an athletic situation?
No, I think there's always going to be people who are selfish, who are focused on their own stuff rather than the teams. I look at a team as a teeter totter or a seesaw. On one side, you got leaders. They think long term. They think we instead of me. They put the team passion, the team mission first. On the other side, you got the egos. They think short term. Where's my money? How little can I do today and still keep this job? And it's a balancing act. This thing, it goes back and forth. So if you add a couple leaders, lose a couple of egos, you tip that thing the way you want it to tip. That middle group slides that way, and you've got momentum towards success as a team. Same thing if you get too many egos, you tip it the other way, momentum towards failure. That's how it happens in the NFL. That's how it happens in my family. That's how it happens in your business. That's how it happens. That's the give and play. And leadership can make a huge difference there. Leadership is who gets the people over to that side of the team, where you put people in positions to be successful. You have connections, you understand who these people are, and you put them in places where they can be successful. You may have hired somebody to come in and be a truck driver for you, but once you get to know him, you realize, wait a second, this guy is an unbelievable salesperson. We had an opening as a truck driver, so that's what he's doing, but I gotta switch him over. That's what happened to me. I never played linebacker in my life until my third year in the NFL. Coach Collier got to know me and saw me play football and said, you know what, you're a linebacker. Let's put you at linebacker. And I made the Pro Bowl that year as an all-pro linebacker, my first year ever playing linebacker. There are people in your business, there are people in your organization that are in the wrong place, that you could make your team better, and you could get them involved and ask what's important to them and how you can help them help the team.
And what I've seen too, Karl, with working with business leaders now, is a lot of the business leaders are not in their strength every day. A lot of the business leaders, because they're afraid to give up some control, are trying to do things that's not really in their wheelhouse. For example, they didn't ask you to go play center because you were a great linebacker, you were a great defensive end, you were just a great defensive football player, and they didn't ask you to go play center. But I see a lot of business leaders who are afraid. What I'm trying to do is put them in their strength. What do you do best as a business leader here? Well, I do this, this, and this. Okay, then why are you doing this, this, and this? Why don't you empower someone else to do that? They're too afraid to lose that control sometimes. And do you see that a lot happening too?
Yeah, you can definitely see that in sports for sure. Again, we can go back to Coach Hackett this year. He's not a guy who he wants to focus on the offense. He's delegated the defense over to Evero. He's brought in a specialist now just this last week to help him with end of game and halftime management. And he admits this is he knows what he's good at, and he's going to work at that. And I've been so impressed by his approach to that, I'm going to work within my strengths, and we're going to move forward as a team, because that's what's most important.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to step up and say, even in public. And I don't even think it's necessary to do it publicly, but privately with your teammates, you definitely have to. But to just say, okay, this was a mistake. Let's move forward, and let's win some games.
Okay, I want to go back to one thing in your 6 rules. I don't want to dive too deep into it and give all your secrets, because people need to listen to you and so forth. But the one thing that struck me on your 6 keys was courage. And when I look at Karl Mecklenburg from the time you were a little guy and you had to move and do some different things, and you played all those different sports. You were a hockey goalie, which takes to me, it's crazy. You have to have a ton of courage to do that. Then you went to Augustana, you grew and everything, and you had to have the courage to say, you know what, I'm good enough to go to Big Ten. Then you were a walk on and sweeping the floors, and the courage to keep going. And what is it that Karl Mecklenburg has in terms of courage when you say courage to try new things, courage to do the best I can, the courage to branch out, the courage to go out there? Because to me, and this is just my opinion, a 12th round pick who should be in the Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame, the number one thing that I think you had was courage, because you were always never afraid to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
Amazing
appreciate
to
that,
me.
Joe. Yeah. The courage to be decisive was my whole career.
Okay.
To, I prepared. I understood what I was supposed to do, and then I allowed myself to do it. I see, and I coached at Kent Denver for a while. My son was playing there, and I coached over there at coach football, obviously, and really smart kids. I mean, I think we had 6 kids that were National Merit Scholar finalists on the football team, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But they wouldn't allow, they wouldn't be decisive. They'd get, assuming that this happens and this happens and this happens. What? No, go. when you prepare and then you allow yourself to go. I've relished that opportunity to feel like the hay's in the barn. I'm ready to go. Let's just go and take advantage of opportunities when they come to you. I get up every morning. I do a little Bible study. I think about who I'm going to run into that day, how I can make a difference in their lives, how I can impact them. And then when those opportunities arise, I'm ready and I go.
No.
And I take advantage of those opportunities. I think a lot of people are afraid to make mistakes, afraid to take that wrong step, and not reacting, not moving when it's time to move. In the NFL is always wrong. In business is often wrong. Be prepared, go in understanding. I never played with Peyton Manning, but I saw Peyton Manning and got to know Peyton Manning in a couple of different situations. One was the first time I met him. We're at a Super Bowl golf tournament. They have these golf tournaments at the Super Bowl every year where the kids who are going to be the first round draft picks are out of college playing this thing, and then some retired guys playing this thing, and it's a fundraiser. So there's a lot of paid participants. And so we're at this dinner at the start of this thing, and Peyton comes up to me, and I didn't know who Peyton was. I didn't follow college football at the time. He comes up to me, "Oh, Mr. Mecklenburg, I love what you did for the Broncos. You know, you led the team and had more sacks than anybody in the history of the team. You had over 1,000 tackles. You were the captain on the team. You were the player rep for the union. You did this." And then he started talking about my University of Minnesota career. He was 2 years old when I played at the University of Minnesota. He didn't follow me at the University of Minnesota. But what he had done is he had called the guy in charge of the golf tournament, found out what retired players were going to be there, and studied up on us. And this was before Google. He had to go to a library or something. I don't know what he did, but that was his thing. I don't know if you watched his retirement speech, but he went back to it over and over and over again. Nobody's going to out-prepare me. That was the whole thing about his speech. That's all what he talked about was preparation and going into a situation and then allowing yourself to go. I mean, he was he knew exactly what defense you were in before you knew what defense you were in, and he'd pick you apart. That year he set every record he could set as a quarterback as far as yardage and touchdowns and percentage of completions and all that stuff. He couldn't throw the ball 50 yards. He couldn't. His neck was messed up, his shoulder, his hand. But what he could do is he could be decisive. he could prepare and go into the situation and let himself go when it's time to go. And that, to me, that was my career too. I mean, I run a 4.940. I'm not fast enough to play in the end. That's why I was a 3rd round draft pick or a 12th round draft pick. They didn't expect me to make it, but I took the first step before anybody else did. And to me, that's the thing. If you can take the first step in the right direction before anybody else does, all the angles change in your favor. The tight end can't pin you in. The guard can't cut you off. The fullback can't keep you from getting to the line. Everything changes. Same thing in business, same thing in relationships, same thing in community. If you can be prepared, be decisive, and take those steps when those opportunities arise, then you got a chance to be successful.
Well, and I think this too. I think that you have the courage to go for it and not worry about failure. And I think what holds people back from courage is the fear of failure.
Sure.
And what if I do take that first step and I fail? What if I do have the courage to go try it and start my own business and it fails? What if I do have the courage to go out, be a 12th round pick, and I have to go be the bottom rung of the ladder and work myself up to being an all pro football player, and I don't make it and I fail? And
yeah,
a lot of
Joe,
people,
success is overcoming obstacles on the way to your
yeah,
dreams. That's what it is.
it's amazing.
If you're not running into obstacles, if you're not failing, you're not pushing hard enough.
Right.
You don't have a chance to succeed if you're not pushing, and you're not pushing hard enough if you're not failing now and again. I mean, that's just part of it.
And you failed probably a lot, just like I did, just like everyone does.
Sure. And they grade every play in the NFL based on technique and on assignment. You sit in those meeting rooms, they've got a sheet in front of them. They said you did it right. They said you did it wrong. If you're an all pro, you grade out right around 90%. So 10% of the time you're wrong. You're very wrong. The coach is telling everybody in the room you're wrong.
Yeah.
And so what do? You set some reasonable short-term specific steps to get better at that. Next week, something else is going to be wrong. Work on that. I failed all the time. That's part of being successful is overcoming, and that's what success is.
Amazing. Courage is awesome. When you talk about your 6 traits, that's the one that sticks out the most with me for you, because you've never been afraid to let it fly. I used to tell my players that all the time. Just let it fly, because if you don't, then that's when you're going to have regret after the game. Did you give everything you had to the game? Did you compete at the highest level you could compete at? Were you prepared? All those different things. And if that was the case, then you don't have anything to hang your head about, because you let it fly. You went out and you did it. Where I saw a lot, and I don't like using this term that much, but the head played more than the body did a lot in players, because they were so afraid to fail. So their brain paralyzed them sometimes in a game. And I just couldn't stand that, because if that happened then in a football game, when I was coaching a football game or a baseball game, what was it going to be like when they went for their first interview? What was it going to be like when they went for their first sale? What was it going to be like when they asked their wife to marry them? Were they going to freeze up then too? So using athletics to help them grow through that and have the courage to go for it was huge for me. And you just kind of just went through that whole process of being prepared gives you the courage to go too. If you're not prepared, you won't have the courage to go for it and get after it and so forth. So beautifully said. You're an amazing guy. I could go on forever and ever, but I have 3 questions for you. My book is called The 3 Ps, Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. So I ask every one of my guests on my show, what is your purpose in life?
Yeah, my desire, my passion, my mission for the longest time was I'm going to be the greatest football player that ever played the game, right? I'm 62 years old now. I'm not Tom Brady. I can't still play. I have other desires and passions and missions. As a husband and a father, I want to give unconditional, uncompromising love to my family. As a Christian, I want everything I say and do to reflect God's love. And as a speaker and an author, I want to inspire long-term positive change. That's who I am. That's who I've decided I'm going to be. And I know where I'm going. Now, I have dyslexia. For those of you who don't know what that is, that basically, I don't know my left from my right. I'm lost all the time. Thank God for GPS. Right.
Wow.
I think that's what it's like for people who don't know where they're going when they're looking at their lives, when they're making day-to-day decisions. If you don't have those desires, those passions, those missions, those things that you know are important to you, that you're moving towards, how do you make a decision?
Right.
If anything happens from this interview, I hope it's that people look at what's important to them, what their desires, their passions, those missions are, and don't sell yourself short. Needs to be an extravagant, long-term, general thing, like I was talking about with the football, or with the family, or with my faith, or with my business. That this is where I'm going, and once you have those things established, then you can move towards them.
Pretty amazing. And so your purpose and your passion, you kind of went through both of those right there. And what I say is your purpose and your passion usually kind of equal each other. They kind of mesh with each other. But what holds it together, where people have a hard time staying in your purpose and passion, is because their perspective changes sometimes. What's your perspective on life?
Yeah, that perspective piece is a challenge for people. Yeah, I believe that success is overcoming obstacles. So I'm not overcome or put off by an obstacle. I expect there to be obstacles. I expect there to be challenges. I'm looking for those obstacles. I'm looking for those challenges, because if I can break through those, that's another step towards where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that perspective of welcoming challenge is something that has allowed me to overcome and overcome and overcome. It's not, I'm not any different than anybody else, as far as we all have talents, we all have abilities, we all have things that God's given us that's
Mm-hmm.
there. But
Gifts.
it's up to us to have the courage to try new things, to take those steps, to move towards those things that are exciting to us. And if you don't believe that, if you don't go into life with okay, there's a challenge, how can I beat that? I think you're really missing the boat.
Well, I think it's important too. I tell people this all the time, that challenges help you gain confidence. So when you're looking for challenges and you want those challenges in your life, you're probably not going to overcome every challenge. I mean, I haven't in my life, but when you overcome it, and even when you try to overcome it and you have the courage to go for it and everything else, that's building confidence in you. And one of the things I try to tell my leaders that I work with is, if you don't challenge your people, you're telling them that you don't believe in them. When you challenge your people, you're telling them, I believe that you can overcome this and you can get this challenge done and you can do this, so that you keep building confidence in your people. I call it the light bulb moment. You always want to keep turning that light bulb on in your people. And the best way to do that is to keep challenging them. And also, when you're challenging them, notice that not every time they're going to meet that challenge. Sometimes they're going to come up a little short, but then what are you going to do to help them get to the next challenge, and so forth? So um, I love that word challenge. And you're just making me think a lot today about courage and challenge now, and how they go together. And you said it, I'm looking for challenges. How many people in this world say I'm looking for challenges? I mean, that's an amazing statement. I love that.
Well, I appreciate that. It's I'm just starting my own podcast talking about challenges. All right.
Yeah.
If I get up in front of a group and say, have the courage to try new things,
Right. Right.
I got to do it. I mean,
Right.
that's there's no question. And it's not natural. I mean, if it's easy and comfortable, I want to stay right there a lot of times. I remember I had one of those flip phones, the
Yeah.
the original cell phone, and I was speaking at the Global Speaker Summit in South Africa. So we were going over there anyway. So we decided to go over a week early. Brought my dad, brought my kid, and we took a photo safari. I mean, it was so cool. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. But you're back in the jungle. We're in Northeast South Africa. It sounds like Dr. Seuss or something, right? We're in this back of this truck. The guides bring you around in these pickup trucks, and they've got risers in the back that you sit on. and they inform you, stay in the truck. You look like a big animal. Get out of the truck. You look like a little animal. Something might eat you, right? So stay in the truck. You sit in the truck. You go around, and there's 3 or 4 of these guys out there bringing groups around, and they're calling each other on their cell phones when they find a cool animal, like, well, I found the lion, or I found the hippo, or whatever, and they put our guide, Philemon, a guy from who was a Zulu guy, and pulls out his phone, and it's the exact same phone as mine. I'm like, I got it. That's finally put me over the top. I got to get a new phone when I get home. It's tough. But I mean, that's me. It's not natural for me, but I've got to look for it. I got to find challenges. I got to find changes. I got to find ways to take another step forward. And I don't think it's real natural for anybody to seek challenges. But if you make it a priority, I think you'll find you open up avenues and open up opportunities that you never considered.
Yeah. And I think, as a coach, when you talk about that, and as a business leader, I think you should lead that way. I think you should lead your people that way, that you're always trying to challenge them and find them new opportunities and find them new ways to grow and progress. The name of my podcast is the People Progressing Podcast.
Right.
It's always about that progression. It's always about that growth. It's always about that learning. It's always striving to lay it out there. And the challenge and courage. This has been amazing. Thanks, Karl, for coming on. I know you're a busy guy, and it was great meeting you the other day, and then coming on my podcast has been an amazing thing for me. I'm a lifelong Bronco diehard. You are definitely in my top 5 Broncos of all time for sure. And I am very biased in saying that you should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to say that one more time in case anybody out there is listening that needs to listen to that. And keep going with your speaking career and stuff. How can people get a hold of you if they want you to come speak, or just get a hold of you for anything?
Yeah. Go to my website, karlmecklenburg.com. You can misspell it a number of ways and still get there.
Yeah.
But that's the easiest way. My contact information is there. There's lots of video. There's opportunities to read referrals from other clients and other people in your industry. And I'd love to hear from people. Like I said, my passion now is helping meeting professionals put on memorable events. And I'm going to not only give you a great speech, but I'm going to give you a great meet and greet situation where I'm shaking hands and posing for photos and signing books and doing whatever you ask me to do. So it's more than just a speech when you bring me into your meeting, and I love that part of it, connecting with people off the stage as well as on the stage.
Yeah, you're amazing. I appreciate you so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll get to see each other again soon. I know there's another meeting coming up next month, I think. So you've become a quick mentor to me, just with our conversations the other day, because I wasn't real sure if it was okay to mesh the athletic and the business world together, how people would react to that. And you gave me the courage to say, yeah, it is. And that's what we're going to go with now. So I just appreciate you so much. And you didn't have to do that for me, but you have, and shows me what kind of guy you really are. So I really appreciate you coming on, and the best of luck going forward. And if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know.
I appreciate it, Joe. Same. We'll be in contact. I don't know if I'm gonna be at the next meeting. It depends if I'm in town or out of town. I got some bookings up in front of me here, but yeah, I go to every Colorado National Speakers Association meeting I possibly can.
Well, I'll be bugging you. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of the People Progressing Podcast. If you can get a hold of me through coachjoewhite97@gmail.com if you need anything. So appreciate Karl coming on again, and keep progressing and keep growing, and keep your people progressing and growing. Thank you so much.